The advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Granpeesheh and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. Look who's here with us this morning, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Good morning, Shannon. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here.
It is so great to be here with you. This is the grateful month, and I'm so grateful to be with you here this morning. So want to remind everybody, we are live right now. Today is the 19th of November. It is 2024. We're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and probably a dozen other sites. Our fabulous Chris Desmond is going to show you at some point on the screen. He'll key you into all the places that we are live. I want to remind you that you can be writing in questions right now. We're happy to have you do that. We have some questions that came in ahead of time. Also want to remind, we know that some of you watch us live and we love that live interaction, but many of you listen later in podcasts because that's an easier way and you can get it whenever you want to. Remember that there are 14 years of podcasts that you can download right now, and we're available wherever you get your podcasts. When you listen in on podcasts, you will hear commercials interspersed because that's how we pay for getting it to you for free. If that is something that you, I know some of you have written in and said, I'd rather pay a little bit and be able to have it ad-free, you can do that by going to glow.fm/autism-live. When you go there, it's $5 a month to get everything that we do with the Autism Network, including Ask Dr. Doreen, and it shows up in your inbox, and it's totally ad-free for just $5 a month. As I said, we're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she is a true expert in the field of autism, and I humbly refer to her as my mentor and really the person who saved our lives. So glad to be able to be here with her and have her answer your questions in real time about whatever you'd like to talk about. But we have a topic today. What are the things a parent should be looking at to make sure their child has their best outcome? So you guys can be writing in right now. I want to remind everybody that even though Dr. Granpeesheh, I believe, is the autism expert in our time, there is no expert who can give individually specific advice in this format. It wouldn't be fair to the individual who is asking for advice or the individual that they're asking for advice about, or Dr. Granpeesheh for that matter, because she doesn't have eyes on the situation. But she's a brilliant mind, is able to ask a lot of questions that will help to lead to more answers for you when you go to the expert who has eyes on the situation where you live. We encourage you to write in and tell us where you are in the world. We don't need your street address, but what's the closest major city that you are, so that it gives us an idea of what kinds of resources might be available to you. So, Dr. Granpeesheh, should we launch in?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Shannon. And yeah, I'm excited. We missed a couple of weeks. And of course, next week is Thanksgiving week, so we won't be here, but I'm happy to answer any questions now.
Okay. And I'm saying hi to Rosie, who's already written in and waved and sent a heart. This was a question that you had specifically asked for me to make sure that we covered because somebody reached out to you on LinkedIn. They said, my little guy was diagnosed with autism at age 4. He is now 4.7. I feed him all organic and non-GMO meats and vegetables from birth. So during my pregnancy, which was probably the issue. Not during my pregnancy, I think is what it means, which was probably the issue. Wondering if I detox on him, is autism reversible? Will the brain be able to fix itself? I appreciate a response. Thanks a million. So I hope I've got that right, because they have detours on him, but I think that means detox.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wanted to be able to answer this question live because there's so many parents who think about autism in that way. I guess in a way, first of all, there's a little bit of self-blame, I think, in that question, which should never be. So I want to address that. And then secondly, there's a little bit of wondering if the whole thing is reversible, which I want to talk about that. That's very important. So, when you think about autism, it's really important to realize that, listen, if we knew how to prevent autism, everyone would be doing it, right? There would be a formula. We don't know how to prevent autism. We don't even know really what causes autism in everyone, because I think the problem is that autism is a certain definition right now, and it encompasses a very, very wide array of individuals. And I think there's multiple causes in there. So some people might have developed autism due to different reasons than others in the whole kind of spectrum. We do know that I think scientists have identified over, I think, 30, 40 genes that are related to some aspect of autism, but we absolutely do not have the full array of genes that have some sort of relationship. We do know that in some cases there is a genetic predisposition. What that means is that some combination of genes are present, and then when they are triggered by something in the environment, then the child's development goes in a different direction. And as it goes down a different path, the symptoms that the child exhibits, the things that happen, are then labeled as autism. So, for example, there are kids who, let's say, they're exposed to certain toxins. Yes, it could be foods. It could be, there's so many toxins in our environment that are just unpreventable. Like, it's very, very hard to not have exposure to toxins in the world nowadays, because we're not talking about just, there's all kinds of toxins on our food, right? So we don't even want to go there because there's a million of them. Our soil is pretty toxic. Overuse of antibiotics can cause some toxicity. Overuse of vaccines can cause toxicity. Water in plastic can cause toxicity. There's toxicity in the air in some areas. The use of electromagnetic fields, the Wi-Fi and internet, which has increased so significantly, can lower our threshold so that we're more susceptible to toxins. And all of that we all experience, all of us. So one would ask, why do certain children, when exposed to those things, their development goes in a different direction? And that can be a combination of things like the child having low detoxification capabilities, what's called low redox. And that's influenced by our genes. So not something you can do much about. If you have low redox, you have low redox. And yes, you can limit your exposure to certain toxins, but when you are exposed to some things, some mild toxins, you'll have inflammation developing, and that inflammation then just makes development much harder. It's a very, very complicated cycle. So I never really want parents to think, oh my gosh, this would have never happened if I had eaten organic foods when I was pregnant. It really isn't that simple. I wish it was. If it was, believe me, every pregnant mom would only be eating organic foods, right? And that's just not the case. So let's put that aside and let's talk about detoxification. And you have to be very careful about this, because there are dangerous things we can do to detoxify as well. In fact, like some of the ways that you can detoxify from metals, toxic metals, which some kids actually are exposed to very high levels of metals, and they do need detoxification, but it's a pretty dangerous process, and you have to be very, very cautious when this type of thing is done. And then the question becomes, what is the cause of the toxicity? What age did it affect the child? How high is the toxicity? And as we detoxify, what reversible things can we expect to see? So all of those are related to each other. And let's assume that you have a child who has, is reacting to some toxins in their food, and you then are able to modify that by modifying the child's diet. So in some ways, you're reversing the exposure to the toxicity. Meanwhile, that is taking years to do. And now the child is, let's say, 5 years old. And during the course of the previous 5 years, they've just not gained information from their environment the way that another child would, for example. So they have fallen behind. And so it's not a matter of the moment that you change their diet or you change their whatever, exposure or the things they're allergic to or their environment, whatever. It's not that that moment just reverses everything, because meanwhile you've had some time where the child has just not been learning. So really now, or they've been learning in a different way. Let me put it that way. They've been learning in a different way. So now you kind of have to go back and help the child catch up and help the child learn a lot of things. And sometimes it's possible to kind of give the child a massive number of things to learn, and they are able to organize it in the way that they need so that they can use it. And sometimes it's just too much, right? And the child is 5 years old and they're supposed to be learning the things a 5-year-old learns, but they're also learning things a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old learn. And so it's overload and it's a lot of stuff. And the child has a hard time organizing it all in a way that's retrievable. Meanwhile, also remember that it's not just about falling behind learning skills. It's also about developing coping behaviors, I want to call them. Like, for example, when a child is 3, 4, or 5, and let's say they haven't developed language, and let's say that's because whatever is getting in the way, whether it's the toxicity has affected their brain development or their sensory involvement, whatever it is, but it has led to this child not being able to use language the way that a typically developing child would, right? So as a result of that, it's not just that we have to go back and teach the language. It's also that the child has figured out other ways to communicate. What are those other ways? Sometimes those other ways are challenging behaviors. And all the child's really doing is coping and trying to figure out how to communicate. So now you have a child who needs to learn a lot of skills that they didn't learn, but you also have a child who has learned challenging ways of communicating, which you need to eliminate. So there's a lot that goes into this kind of what we talk about reversing of the symptoms of autism. And so, yes, you certainly can start to do the things that you think are right. It's not always about organic foods. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's as simple as like food coloring. Sometimes it's gluten, casein, corn, soy. I mean, there's so many things that our kids don't really digest or break down. And sometimes it's about metals. Sometimes it's about just exposure to plastics. There's lots of different things. Whatever you can do to help the child live in a clean environment is going to help. Certainly, it's going to help reduce inflammation. That's true of everyone, by the way. That's also true of us. Like, whatever we can do to live in a more clean environment is always going to help.
Absolutely. I love
huge
David,
roundabout answer.
No, but it was great because it covered a lot of things. And I love that a couple of weeks ago we had David Humphrey on, and he was talking about Why wouldn't we want to make every child as healthy as possible? And when you're as healthy as possible, amazing things can happen because you can learn more. And that's just the be all and end all of it, right? I want to say hi to several people wrote in and said where they were listening from or watching from. I want to say hi again to Rosie, who's watching from Austin, and then Mama Cat, who's also close to Austin. That's really fun. I'm coming to visit Austin in February, you guys. Tails Gaming says that they're in Sonoma, California. And Autism Journey with Elijah said hello. They're in speech therapy this morning, but just dropped by to say hello and good morning. Good morning to you. But then Kylie wrote in, and Kylie said, thanks for your help a few weeks ago. We got all of the blood tests done. Still need to see our doctor to talk about it, but it's clear we need to go gluten and dairy free.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad you discovered that. That sometimes makes a huge difference. And I always tell families, I know it's a big burden to live that way. It's much less of a burden now than it was 10 or 15 years ago, but it is also a gift because you've kind of realized what you need to do, which is really important. And I have a lot of families who've come back even after just the casein and have said, wow, what a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't that way for everybody, but it certainly was for my family, for my child. We went gluten and dairy free, and I have to be honest, like our world changed so drastically, and we were like, wow, this thing is really working. And people encouraged me to do a challenge at some point to see if that's what it was, and I said, why? Why would I do that? He's not throwing tantrums. Things are so much better. I'm not doing a challenge. We're going to live our lives this way. And then I'm sure I've told this story before to you, Dr. Granpeesheh. I took him, we had joined the YMCA because I was going to work out. And I took him to the YMCA, and the woman who was the director of the kids program did not want my son there. I don't know why. I don't know why. But I dropped him off one day, and I went to go get on a piece of equipment. Within 10 minutes, they came and got me, and they said, you have to take him home. He's throwing toys. And I was like, what happened? What happened? And I went to get him, and he was more upset than I've ever seen him. And he was spitting and throwing things. And I was like, what happened? And they were like, he just started doing that, and you have to take him home. So I bundled him up, tried to get him in the car seat. He was pummeling me. It was so bad. I went home, and I said, it was like a Friday afternoon. And I said to my husband, well, apparently the gluten-free, casein-free wasn't what was, I don't know what was now, and I don't know what to do. We went all weekend long, but, and he had a rough time on Saturday and Sunday. By Monday, he was better. And so I went back to the gym and put him in the kiddie gym. And they have these tags that you could safety pin to your child. And mine said, don't feed anything allergies, right? On him, that I put it on. I went to get on a machine again. Within 5 minutes, they came and said, you have to come and get him. And he was hysterical. And unconsolable, and they said, this isn't going to work. He can't come back. And I picked him up screaming. He's hitting me on the back, and I'm trying to get him into the car. And I got him into the car, and I was standing outside the car sobbing when this young man came around the side of the building, one of the people who worked in the kiddie daycare, and he said, can I just ask you a question? And I said, sure. And he said, is there any possibility that his reaction that he's having right now could be because somebody fed him pretzels?
Oh my God.
And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, on Friday and today, as soon as you brought him in, the director sat him down and fed him pretzels.
Yep.
And I hugged that young man because I said, you know what? If I didn't know that, I would have gone home and I would have said, apparently he can eat gluten and dairy and we're okay. Yeah. But that was the challenge that I never intended to do, and it gave me the proof. I hugged him and I said, you may have saved our lives,
Yeah.
But it proved for me that my son's body couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
And that really helped us. And the level of tantrums that we had when he was having gluten and milk went away when he wasn't. So it was, and he was able to learn. Because he wasn't dealing with all that. So that's what we found. I hope that for this family, you're right. It's so much easier than it used to be. But it's, you got to be 100%. I think people think a gluten-free, casein-free diet is a lot like just whatever diet they're on. They're like, oh, I'm having a cheat day. Oh, we're going to McDonald's for a birthday party, so we'll have a cheat day. It's not like that.
No, it's not. It's harder, especially gluten, because it's in everything. But it makes, and I think it's, with some children, their sensitivity level is so high that you have to be 100% clean from that allergen or from that product, from that protein. And with other children, you can actually just reduce the intake and it will help. But when you first want to try something like this, you're not going to see results unless you are 100% clean for a month. Like, let's be really, really clear about that. So it's hard. And so a lot of parents will kind of give up on it. But like I said, nowadays, it's not even just kids with autism, right? Our food is so bad that there are more and more people learning that they have these allergies and cannot live with these proteins, because these proteins have been modified genetically so much that they are really doing harm to our body and not good.
Absolutely. I have a couple of, Andrea, I see that you've written in a question. I'm going to get to you. I got 2 questions that I have to get to that I made a promise. The first one, my 3-year-old son has a lot of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. We're working with a MAPS doctor, and he's in a 40-hour-a-week ABA program. People say this is part of autism, but his day-to-day variations seem extreme. One day being so related and present, and the next stuck in his world. Is this really typical? It's so anxiety-provoking and disheartening in those slump moments.
I can only imagine. Do they say how old the child is?
3. Yes, 3.
3-year-old. Yeah. It's hard. I appreciate how aware you are as a parent and that you're noticing this. I was going to say, first of all, congratulations to you that he's in an intensive program, because that's really, really good. And it is really hard. And I guess this is our kind of topic for today anyway. It's like, what are the things you should be paying attention to? And I always start with making sure that your behavioral program is good. And I'm not going to get into too much detail on that because there's just so much. We could talk about that for the next 3 hours. But it's about making sure that your child's program is the right level of difficulty, your behavioral ABA program, the right level of difficulty. It has a game plan. So in other words, if you're teaching something right now, it's because it leads to this and this and this and ultimately to what you wanted to teach. And that there's enough reinforcers in it. So it's not too demanding. It's not causing your child additional stress, additional anxiety. It's not becoming aversive. So as long as the program fits those particular criteria and you can see things progressing, then good. And if that's not the case, then I really do recommend that you sit down with the supervisor of your program and ask and say, this shouldn't be the case. It just shouldn't be that my child is struggling. So what are we doing wrong? And keep questioning it. So that is the behavioral side. But yeah, when you see things like, one day the child is really on and another day they're not, I guess what I would do as a parent is I would look at all the foods they consumed. I would keep a food diary, actually, and see if they're changing, if there are particular patterns that you notice that are occurring the day or two before the bad day, for instance. And okay, so maybe it's this that's causing that behavior. I would look at sleep. I would definitely look at sleep because sleep is a very important factor. I would look at gastrointestinal functioning. Sometimes our kids have really bad days because they are bloated or they have pain and they can't express themselves. So that's another thing I would look at. And also, going back to the behavioral, I would look at if there's a pattern of wish therapists they do better with. Sometimes our kids just shut down when they don't have a good therapist or someone who's rewarding enough, fun enough, in contrast to the others. All of those things are important. The people in their environment, the foods they eat, the sleep they're receiving, all of that kind of stuff is important.
And I love that they're working with a MAPS doctor. I think that that's fantastic. But all MAPS doctors aren't the same. I guess.
Yeah.
I guess my
That's true.
first question is that some MAPS doctors really want you to start a bunch of supplements all at the same time. And some of them want you to start one thing at a time and try that for 60 days before you add the next thing. And so that's my
very
question
true.
for that parent.
Yeah. So that could be part of it as well. And that's great that you brought that up, Shannon, because it could very well be that the things that are like you're being overloaded by the treatments that you're receiving. And that is very important as well. So you do have to pay attention to all of that. It's really, really important. And also, as you're doing these MAPS therapies, some of them are very intense. And some of them could actually be causing these things as well. So I think the right way to do it is have a conversation with your MAPS doctor and have a conversation with your BCBA. And hopefully that'll help figure things out.
I love that. Okay, we had an adult write into us on our YouTube channel, and I don't know if you're going to have the answer to this, but if you don't, then I don't know who to ask. This person says, I have been in the same supported living facility for 3 years, and I have had one caretaker for the same amount of time. Now, all of a sudden, I'm being kicked out of the company. The good news is that another company is interested in me along with my caregiver. Problem is that when the caregiver applied to the company, we were at a state where if she quits or get fired, she can't have any contact with me for a year. But if she found another job as a caregiver, then she could have contact with me. Do you know of a way that she could work at the same company where I would be a participant, but at the same time not break her contract?
Oh, I see. She has a non-compete with the previous company is what I'm getting out of this.
That's what I thought too.
So the first thing I'll tell you is to tell your caretaker non-competes they're not legal anymore. So she doesn't have to worry about it. No one can actually follow through with that. I wouldn't really worry about that. I think that it's really important that if you've attached to a particular caretaker, that they be part of your life. And I don't think that her prior company is going to do anything to try to go after her. So I would just move forward and do what's necessary for your health. You shouldn't be worrying about this. Like, we have enough going on, you shouldn't be worrying about trying to make sure your caretaker doesn't have problems.
There we go. I knew you'd know, or I strongly felt it. Okay, so
a couple of years ago, non-competes were kind of, it was determined that they're unfair to employees. So, yeah.
Okay, I got a real quality problem here from Andrea. She says, good morning, ladies. My son is 5 years old. He does half-day typical developing preschool and half-day ABA. His BCBA just told me that we can start looking, in 3 months, we can start looking at discharging him because he has caught up to his peers. He still has 8 months before kindergarten. I'm nervous to discharge him. Do you feel I should fight this and keep him there until he does go to kindergarten, or trust that he will do fine? I know that he has been in ABA since he was 2 and 10 months, so about 2.5 years. So
parents go through so much, Shannon. It's amazing. So we have to,
Yes.
worry about these things. So what I would do, and hopefully you have the resources to do this. What I would do is I would actually get not your BCBA. I would not go and argue with your BCBA. There's no benefit in doing that. I would, I can give you a resource for this, skills. I I want you to get a developmental assessment. So you're looking for a developmental psychologist who can do that for you. And they will give your child a bunch of different tests. And those tests will help identify if your child is still lagging significantly in an area of development. An easier way for you is to actually go online and look at Skills Global or skill is it called Skills Global, the public version of it, Shannon? Do you know, or is it just Skills?
I think it's Skills for
Skills
Autism.
for Autism, yeah. And you should just go on Skills for Autism and do the assessment. You don't really need to continue with it. You just need to do the assessment. So you basically just pay for 1 month licensing and you'll do the assessment. It's a lot of questions. Your child's 5, so expect it to take you, more than 10 hours. So it's a lot of questions to answer. And once you and you can stop and take breaks and, do it over the course of a week or two. But then what it'll give you is a list of all the things that your child should be doing for a 5-year-old and they're not. And it's across different domains. So it'll tell you the things they're not doing in language and social skills and play skills, in adaptive, so like daily living type skills, in motor, in play, in academic, even if you want to do that portion, and in social. Did I say social already? Cognitive skills and executive function skills. So you do there's 8 areas and you do all of them, the full assessment, and it'll list for you the things that they're delayed on. And then you take that back to your BCBA and you say, what do I do with these? What should I do? Because I'm worried that my child will fall behind on these particular things. And some of them, like in the social or academic, will relate to school. And then maybe you have a way to convince your BCBA that they should stay with you until 6 months past your child starting kindergarten or something, just to make sure the transition works. I don't usually stop when we're close to a big transition like school. I will actually want to overlap for at least 6 months to make sure the child's good in school. But congratulations, that's good news, and hopefully not much will come out of the assessment and the transition will be smooth.
It just brings back memories of the day when I was told that in 6 months we would be graduating out of ABA. And I just want to take a moment, because I think that there are a group of people that this happens to. And I remember in that moment, I had been waiting and waiting and waiting for that moment for years. And I was so filled with fear. I didn't know where to go next, but I had the most wonderful thing that I could go downstairs 1 floor and there was a mom who had been through it. And so I went down and threw myself into Bryce Myler's office and said, you have to help me. I don't know what to do. You're the person who knows how to do this. What do I need to do? Because it's not the end of the road.
Right.
But when you start ABA, all you can think about is a day when your child isn't going to need ABA anymore. But then at a certain point, when it gets to be so good and they're helping so much, you accept that into your life and go, this is what's helping me. And then when they say, okay, we're about to be done, I think it's a very scary time for a parent. But I just want to say to this parent, I promised Bryce, who, by the way, is going to be co-hosting a show with us soon, because during the All Ghouls Gala, we auctioned off getting to co-host an episode of Autism Live with me. And,
nice.
And Bryce bid, and she paid $300 for that. That made me.
My God.
I know. So Bryce is I have to reach out to her and figure out when she wants to do that, because we said it would be in December. So at some point, Bryce is going to be co-hosting the show with me, and I encourage you, this parent, to tune in for that, because she's hilarious, first of all, and an amazing.
I can't wait to see that.
Right. She's absolutely hilarious, and she is the mom that I went down to and said, what do I do? And she gave me such great advice. I really think she needs to write a book about what her advice was to me. But I want to offer to this parent, please feel free to reach out to me. We can hold hands through it, because it's the beginning of, like, it's a problem. I get it, but that's why I said it's a quality problem. I'm so excited for you that
It's also like a lot of fear, right? I mean, we just become used to certain things and somewhat dependent on having someone that can consult with you. I don't, a lot of BCBAs will be happy to stay in touch with you and help and guide if issues come up. So, realize that some of this is just your own anxiety.
yeah, and I think it's normal.
Absolutely.
There's that song, that the Stevie Nicks song, about, I'm not going to be able to think what it was, but it was a song that I sang over and over again, because she says, I'm not going to be able to think of it. Never mind. I'm having a senior moment. I'll think of it at 2:00 in the morning, which is a terrible, terrible thing. Okay. So we've answered all the questions, and so you guys can feel free to write in questions, but I want to go back to our topic. And I'm asking Chris, lately, whenever you're doing something good, spammers want to come in. So we have some horrible spam. Chris, whenever you get a second, I'd appreciate if you delete, because this is not the place for people to, it just makes me mad. Don't tout your herbal supplements here. That's not what we're here about. So thank you. But our topic for today was, what are the things a parent should be looking at to make sure that their child has their best outcome? And I know this is a topic that you could speak on for hours. And I think it's sort of all encompassing, right? Because everybody's doing their best to juggle 2 or 3 things, but we're all feeling like, what did I miss? Even now, I feel that way. What have I missed? Because you can never do absolutely everything.
100%. I mean, and let me just tell you, I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know every parent, but I have 3 typically developing kids and who are adults. And a lot of times when I see them struggling with something, I go back and I think, what could I have done differently?
Yeah.
So I think it's a normal thing for parents who are caring to ask themselves, what are the things I should be doing? Shannon, you and I have we've written a draft of a book with all this good stuff, but let's go through it together, I guess. First of all, I think it's really, what I was talking about earlier in regards to teaching, making sure the child learns. And that is why I am such a big supporter of ABA, because ABA, when it's done right, is the best way to teach. And so I think that's very important, making sure that you have a good ABA program and that it is the right number of hours, and that you are committing to making your child available to receive those hours. A lot of times I see parents who right now we're having, there are a few parents that are in the prospect list of CARD coming in. And the reason that there's a delay on us taking them in is because they only want to do 2 hours of ABA a week. And that parent has been guided that way incorrectly by someone. And that is sad, because, it's very, like, unless a child is transitioning out of an ABA program, I don't think that anyone would benefit enough from just 2 hours a week. So, and those are the types of things that there's so much incorrect knowledge out there. So it's really important to make sure that you have the right amount and high quality ABA. So that's the first one. And I want to stop there, Shannon, because I want you to also comment on each of these as we go through.
It literally makes me want to lay down on the floor and cry when I hear my generation fought so hard to be able for all the families now to have insurance funding. And I understand it's not easy, that even with the insurance, it's not easy and it's overwhelming. But to hear that a parent who has funding to get ABA help thinks that 2 hours will do is just a failure to communicate to me. And one of the things that I say to parents all the time is think of anything that you want to learn and be good at. Anything, whether it's playing the violin, whether it's being a golfer, or just learn a new language. And think about if you went to any school to learn how to do that, they would tell you that the more you practice, the better you're going to be. Now think about your child that you want to communicate.
Right.
And think about how many hours it takes to learn a new language. And then think about saying to them, I'm only going to let you do it just to the point where you're frustrated and never to the point where you get good at it. And how, like if somebody said, that's what I want to do with your child, I'd like to teach your child something new, but I'm not going to teach them enough. I'm just going to teach them to the point of frustration. How do you feel about that? I think any parent would feel like they want to throw up. That's how it makes me feel when I hear that a parent wants to do 2 hours of ABA. It's just, it's a failure of communication. And I take that personally because I feel like a lot of what I do in life now is make sure that it gets communicated to people, you know, what will actually help your child. So please give me the names and addresses of those parents, Dr. Granpeesheh, so I can call them personally.
Yeah, this is kind of what you and I were chatting about earlier. It's just, it's sad. It's heartbreaking because we have seen so many kids who do so well. And it's just very, very difficult for us as providers to say, okay, I kind of know what the future will become if we don't do this right. Yeah. And I don't want to scare any parent. And also when you insist on things like this, parents will come back and say, oh, you're just trying to make money. And the truth is we have hundreds of kids trying to get in. We have about 100 children trying to come in every month, Shannon, as you know. Yes. And so this is not about making money. This is about, I would like to help your child. I don't want to skip over your child because someone gave you wrong information. Yeah. So that is one, the right amount and high quality ABA. That's like probably the most important. Then moving on, you do have, a lot of children, not all, but a lot of kids have some underlying medical issue that shouldn't be overlooked. And a lot of times with autism, there's so many behaviors that are present and exhibiting that we forget to look for underlying medical issues, right? So, and when I talk about medical issues, let's start with just gastrointestinal inflammation, which is the highest correlation to autism. And then earlier this show, I talked a little bit about the connections there, but I want parents to realize that when you have gastrointestinal issues, let's say you're bloated or you're, have diarrhea or constipation, your child is going through these types of issues, there's something that's going on when they eat food that is resulting in all of this. And that thing that's going on, which, we've talked about a lot over the course of the various shows, which 10 years ago or 15 years ago, people used to talk a lot about the leaky gut, right? And this is really all about our kids not really being able to break down the proteins that they're eating. And so a lot of these proteins are not broken down to amino acids, which are the source of feeding all of our organs, right? But what happens is they're broken down halfway to peptides, and these peptides then leak through literally into our bloodstream and do cause problems in brain functioning. And I think that's the biggest issue, is for parents to realize that when it's a tummy ache, it can lead to, it can have an influence on how the child is learning. Absolutely. So that is very important, to take care of those GI issues, not just GI. There's other metabolic issues that a lot of our kids struggle with. So all of those things, the medical stuff, becomes very important. Another one that we don't often enough talk about is seizures. And a lot of children who have seizure disorder, it isn't recognized until a lot later, because sometimes a seizure can look like a stereotypical repetitive behavior. And a parent might think, oh, this is just, self-stimulatory. But the truth is, any of these medical underlying issues, if they're dealt with, you are now stabilizing the child and allowing the child to feel better and therefore learn better. And that's the whole importance of the medical stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You talk about, you have written a book in which I've assisted you with, but one of the things that you tell the story about meeting a kiddo who had a nail fungus problem that was affecting the way she was learning. Yeah. And so It's critical, what we said before about why wouldn't we work to make all of our kids as healthy as possible? Because when you're healthy, you learn better. That's just common sense. But I think a lot of us have had the experience where you go to the doctor or you go to the emergency room, your child is having symptoms, and as soon as you say that they have autism, suddenly they're not going to treat it, or they're not going to treat it the same, or they get worried. I certainly had that happen. We have to be advocates as parents to make sure we're with the right doctors who will listen to us and not just attribute something to being autism or say that isn't treatable because your child has autism. They wouldn't give my son an IV in the emergency room that he needed because I told them that he had autism and they were afraid that he would rip it out. And that ended up him being a lot sicker than he needed to be because they didn't give him the medicine that he needed. So, and I learned I have to advocate.
And that's what you were just talking about earlier. And I think the thing for parents that's important to realize is that this is not just about making the child, their tummy feel better. This is about actually modifying things that are affecting the child's brain. Like you were saying, the experience of having a pretzel could have initially caused some stomach pain, but really it was causing so much aggravation that he was having a major meltdown.
Yep.
So that's the connection that's very important to make sure the medical is taken care of. And along the lines of medical, we also want to look at sleep. Sleep is one of those most important things to me because I don't think people realize that a lot of our kids have, for whatever reason, whether it's an underlying medical that we've not yet discovered, or it's a sensory sensitivity or something, sleep is highly dysregulated in a lot of our kids. And then we expect our kids to be aware, awake, learning at double speed, functional, social, friendly, all these things, and they're just not getting good sleep.
Yeah.
So it is super important to pay attention to sleep. Okay.
And I want to say about that, you can't give away what you don't have.
Yes.
I think there are a lot of parents who their kiddo is having trouble sleeping, which means the parent is having trouble sleeping. And then you're not rested enough to intervene. So it's multifaceted, but the sleep thing is huge for everybody. This entire world needs to prioritize sleep a little bit more. And I say that mostly to myself.
So true. So, and then after that comes the other comorbid mental issues like anxiety and depression and obsessive compulsive stuff. And the anxiety I want to just focus on for a minute because that's a really, really big one. And it's almost a kind of a no-brainer that if you are struggling with the symptoms of autism to a certain severity level, you're going to develop anxiety just because it is so much harder to cope. If you think about it, just something as simple as a child who has sensory dysregulation, right? Which a lot of kids on the spectrum do. That means that lights, sounds, and so on are more disturbing, are more harsh, are more unpredictable and jarring to the individual. Just living in that kind of an environment or situation, you will develop anxiety. Not being able to understand language, you will develop anxiety. Not being able to communicate your needs, you're going to either develop anxiety or depression. All of those types of things are just kind of it makes sense that they're comorbid and high levels of comorbidity with autism. So those things also have to be taken care of and paid attention to, because they're not that hard to deal with, and they can really change the quality of life of the child.
Yes, absolutely. We're running out of time, and there's so many more that I
Questions?
want to bring up.
Okay.
But anxiety is
Also-
huge.
Yeah. I mean, and those are like, talking about the things you have to pay attention to. There's a lot more that, you also, but those are, I think, the key ones. Is like, are you doing a good behavior program? Do you have the medical, the mental, the sleep, all of that under control? And then if that's the case, you just want to make sure your child is being treated fairly and happy in their overall program.
Absolutely. I want to bring up the school piece, though, because this is one of the things where I'm running into a lot of problems with parents and with schools. That I know that you love school, I love school, and if school, the law is in place to help support kiddos in school if a parent's willing to fight for it. But it's a lot of time and energy. But I see a lot of parents who will prioritize a school program over an ABA program just because it's more familiar to them. It feels safer, and the schools are very good at pressuring, and it's free. And I see a lot of kids. And look, I think it's two different conversations, right? There's under the age of 6, because under the age of 6, you don't have to send your child to school. Right. And so it's totally the parent's choice. And I see a lot of parents who prioritize going to preschool because they've done commercials about preschool. Everybody needs to go to preschool. Preschool is success. And it feels comfortable to the parent. But even after the age of 6, that parents tend to, they go through this, I don't know what the stages are exactly, but they totally think that school is the answer. Then they go through a period of disillusionment where they see that their children aren't being supported properly in school. And often that's too late to go back and do the kinds of things that they could have done earlier when they had the time. So it's a big conversation for me about school and when to do school and why to do school and how much you have to fight to get the program right. But if your child is there for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that, first of all, that's where they should be. And that if that is where they're supposed to be, that it be right. The law says that you're entitled to it, but you sure have to fight for it. And I don't think that's going to change.
No, you're right. And I think it's just hard. What you started out saying, I 100% agree with. I think that we're just used to, at a certain age, my child should go to school. And then I often ask parents, these are the things that are going to happen in school. These are the things that are going to happen if you have an ongoing ABA program. Choose those things. Which one do you want? What are you interested in? And often you have to realize that when you go to school, you're going from a one-to-one, very wonderful teaching situation to a 1-to-20 teaching situation. And that is often, a lot of our kids need a little bit more support before they're ready for that.
Absolutely. I also see that when a lot of times when our kiddos go to school, they will start in a special day program. And if that's where they go and they start in that special day program, I always ask families, ask the school what's the goal? Is the goal for them to get out of the special day classroom, to be half-time in mainstream, or to be full-time in mainstream and graduate? What's the goal for you as a parent? And then ask the school to give you data about how often they're able to do that. The thing that you're asking
what's their overall long-term plan, right? And a lot of times you realize exactly what you said, Jan. The child, they have no plan to mainstream. The plan is, we're going to keep your child in a special ed program.
Forever.
And so as a result of that, the expectations drop.
Yeah.
And that's not good, because a lot of our kids are capable of doing a lot more than what is presented to them.
And we see all the time, I know you've seen it so much more than I have, but I've seen it in the time that I've known you, and I've seen it front row seat, is that with a strong ABA program, kiddos often, sometimes if it starts early enough, they don't even need the special day program, or they progress out of the special day program into 100% mainstreamed, sometimes with a one-to-one aid, but then sometimes that is faded too, to the point where those kids go on to college and have no supports. It happens sometimes. And
absolutely.
And to look at, if you just look at what the outcomes for ABA are and the outcomes when you put a kid into special education, they don't have data to support that they can get the kiddos out of special ed. They don't. Studies have been done and they don't do it. And I wish parents knew that. Rodney had written in when I said, we're not, it's a failure, I'm not communicating. He said, what we have here is a failure to communicate. And I want to say to our audience, if you're watching, share this with people so that they'll have the opportunity to, because I don't think a lot of people are talking this level of truth, Dr. Granpeesheh.
No, I know it. And it's unfortunate, right? Because it is so important, and there's such a small window of opportunity that you can actually play with to make sure that you're giving the child everything they need.
Yeah. But I know that one of the other things that you have talked about in the past, we got about 2 minutes, is that it should not be overlooked that children have to have leisure time and fun and learn how to play. This goes hand in hand with the fact that our toy guide is 100% live on our website. It was a fair amount of work. We've got some amazing toys, but this is an important skill, having leisure time and knowing what to do with it, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I know how much work it is for you, but it's such a valuable thing you do with the toy guide, because the toys that you pick are just so awesome. They're rewarding, and they're teaching the child, they're educational, they're fun. And yeah, absolutely. There's lots of studies showing that people with autism don't learn leisure skills. And, that's part of why we want to make sure that our kids, we have a play curriculum, just focused on teaching our kids how to play. And that does develop into a lot of additional leisure and sports activities.
And as much as we talk about so many other things that can help with anxiety, this is a part of the puzzle as well for anxiety.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. Thank you for bringing that up. It's all just goes back to that kind of making sure that the child's life is fair.
Yes.
And making sure they have a balanced kind of life, right? So just like us, right? You work out, you work, you have some fun time, you family time, etc. And the same with our kids. If they're learning X number of hours, we want to make sure they also have some physical activity, some fun time, some downtime. All of that has to come into it.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our time, but I don't want to give it up because I so enjoy getting to chat with you and spend time with you.
Thank you so
we
much,
aren't going to be here for our show next week. So do you want to say anything of a Thanksgiving message to our viewers?
Absolutely. Happy early Thanksgiving to all of our viewers. It's such an honor for me to be able to, for so many years, be able to join you on this 1 hour a week and answer your questions. Thank you for trusting me. And for sending your questions in. I enjoy it. I love it. It keeps me very connected to the reality of autism. So please continue to do that. And I hope that you will have a wonderful Thanksgiving week and enjoy the time that you have with your families and get a chance to relax and recover.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm incredibly grateful for you, Dr. Granpeesheh. I'm grateful for Chris Desmond. Ooh, the two
I
of you
am
together.
as well, for both of you, Shannon. You and Chris, amazing partners.
This triangle, it's powerful. But I'm also grateful for all of you who tune in and who share and like and comment and send us questions, because we're just so thrilled to have this opportunity to be with you guys. But we're out of time. I got to let you go back to the rest of your world because I know you have a busy day, Dr. Granpeesheh. So grateful and happy Thanksgiving to you. We're going to be back tomorrow with a live show. Our guests who were joining us from Israel, a married couple on the spectrum, are not able to join us. So I don't know. It's going to be a mystery surprise what tomorrow's show is, but it'll be something fun, I promise you. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Bye, Dr. Granpeesheh. Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.